The Cape Metropole is home to approximately 4.2 million people. Daily, tens of thousands of commuters make their way to and from work, schools, shops, and appointments. They travel on foot, by private vehicle, on buses, on taxis, ride by train or bicycle, and even by horse and cart. Apartheid urban design ensured that the majority of the working class lives furthest from their places of work. Many embarking each day on long and tiresome journeys, which start very early in the morning, and their return often ends after dark each night.
Ukuyofika ndawuthi mhlawumbe okanye 2 hours ubheke eMobre.
Bus apha thina sifika ngo7 but 7:45 sibetha siselapha thina.
Khona usebenzisa itaxi mhlawumbe khona ibhasi khona train.
Yabona xa nisebenzisa itaxi yabona ndifika msinyane yabona.
Commuting in an efficient, convenient and safe manner is not always adequate.
Akho safe qala because kusasa akho safe because kuba mnyama ebusika ne.
Congestion on public roads cause time delays, frustration and accidents. Railway stations, bus and taxi terminuses are often the preying grounds for criminals.
Sometimes safe, sometimes it's not. I've got to go to Menenberg. It's not safe there. There's a lot of scholars.
Public transport systems themselves are not adequately designed for the old, physically challenged or the vulnerable.
If you're a wheelchair user, for instance, wanting to get onto a taxi, getting someone to assist you onto the bus or even permit you onto the bus, very difficult indeed.
The Provincial Minister for Transport and Public Works, Tasneem Essop, and the department have devised an innovative provincial vision and delivery plan for public transport in the Western Cape.
Essentially, we're trying to use the creation of a public transport plan through a corridor network feeder systems to be the catalyst for a wider mobility strategy for the metropolitan area. The important components of that, of course, would be the public transport connections. So your appropriate modes would be a bus rapid transit system with feeder systems, possibly looking at the minibus vehicle as the feeder, connecting also to rail. So it's an integrated transport plan where we look at reclaiming public space. We talk about pedestrianisation, the creation of bikeways along these corridors and in our communities. And that's why we talk about the mobility strategy.
22 delivery programs will restructure, promote and deliver appropriate public transport services within the Metropole and Greater Western Cape.
I'm very excited about this plan. I believe that it's going to capture the imagination of our city.
One of the programs deals with the Metropolitan Transport Strategy, which identifies a network of corridors, its feeder systems, and the intermodal integration of the city.
Phase 1 corridor is going to be the Klipfontein corridor, and essentially that corridor takes you from Mowbray right through to Kailicha. And we've used this corridor because it teaches a number of lessons.
As phase 1 of the programs, Klipfontein Road corridor will be converted from its current awkward delivery of services into one single spine of activity, centered on efficient public transport.
People will be using the facility jointly. Bridges will physically connect communities that have been divided in the past. The corridor also gives us an important opportunity to show the interlinkages between different modes of transport.
This will include the introduction of a bus rapid transit system on a dedicated lane.
In November last year, we led a delegation to Bogota, and Councillor Landingwe and his officials, the taxi industry and the bus industry accompanied me and some of my officials to Bogota. And really what they've done is looked at a bus rapid transit system where they've created dedicated bus lanes in corridors, and people would not be affected by traffic jams in that way.
And this will include the effective development of public and commercial spaces to improve the quality of life for users of the corridor.
We're really looking at densification of some of the unutilized space along the route. So there would be opportunities for economic investment into the area, where the people then use the space to open up more retail outlets, etc. We're talking about social activity. We're talking about housing opportunities also along the corridor.
Phase 1 will be the catalyst for other developments and the integration of our city to readdress the problems created by apartheid planning.
Athlone 20 years ago was a hub of activity. It was the business place to be. What's going to be very important in the future is how Klipfontein Road is not only going to be seen as a transport access for people to get from one point to the other, but also a cultural hub, also activities. I mean, we have the stadium not too far away from the Creek building. We have eating houses on the other side. We have business and commerce going on. So there's it becomes a real hub.
Cooperative partnerships have formed between the province and the city. Minister Esop and the Executive Council of the City of Cape Town, Mr. Danile Landingwe, have agreed that through cooperation, delivery must be met in the shortest possible time.
For some time, in the local government and in the provincial government, we have had a big gap between the two parties. But there has been a call from the communities for a transport plan. It dawned to me that the dream was now to be given to the people. It brings such things such as your transport plan into action. It brings such activities such as the pushing of the racial barriers that existed for years, pushing back the frontiers of poverty. To me, it brings such a lot of connection, interconnection between the partnership between the local government and the provincial government. It bears the fruits of that partnership, what it means, what it is.
It is my belief that we can start constructing on the corridor in this particular financial year. So between April to March 2004, we will see the beginnings of construction in this first phase corridor.
Here are some highlights of advantages to business. For starters, improved infrastructure. Klipfontein Road would become a destination rather than people just passing through. There are also opportunities for new businesses. For example, daycare centers, sidewalk cafes, restaurants, and increased property values with the opportunity of reinvestment. More importantly, advantages to the communities. The direct and indirect job creation opportunities of such a project. And what we are all asking for, safer public transport, newer and safer vehicles. And then of course there are the benefits of densification, which means the building of houses and safer pedestrian and cycle paths. And then there are advantages to public transport operators. Bus and minibus taxi industries will become united through a single contracting entity. They will have access to government subsidies, and there will be improved infrastructure for them to use.
To me, it means more than just a political goal, but it's a fulfillment of what people deserve, a correct plan of mobility.
With a continuous public transport corridor from Khayelitsha to Crossroads, Gugulethu to Gatesville, and from Athlone down to Mowbray, the many discomforts currently experienced by commuters and road users will be a thing of the past. Located within the Ikapa Eliglumayu, the Growing Cape concept, roads and spaces that were once meant to divide and public areas that in its design brought about strife and discontent will evolve into roads that bring people together and spaces that unite. Only when we pay attention to the quality of life of all of our citizens and restore their places of dignity will we begin to move forward. Because after all, it is good to have an end to journey towards, but in the end, it is the journey that counts.
There's a bridge to tomorrow. There's a bridge to the past. There's a bridge made of sorrow that I hope will not last.